it's an honor to be here. I've done some trainings in this room before, so I need you to know that your church supports injustices, and the fight against injustices, I should say, on a regular basis, whether you know it or not as a member. We've had a number of FBI trainings and other kinds of trainings in this room, so it's an honor to be here with members of the church. So thank you. And thank you for this sweet introduction. It was great having dinner with you. So I heard y'all learned about trafficking last week. I'm a teacher also, and I will call on people, and I heard there's some high school students in here that are getting credit. So I might make at least one or two of them work for it, if that's okay with you. So I heard y'all, this is the second on trafficking. So what did y'all learn last week?
It's a problem.
Big problem.
Big problem.
Is it a problem where you're sitting?
Yes.
Like, okay, have y'all seen our I-20 video? No? Okay, on our website, please go to our website, the I-20 video. The officer in there is Glenn White. He's Mountain Brook Police. He helps us every single week with special ops. I rescued a 20-year victim from your neighborhood. It took her 6 months to meet me. 2 more months before she'd actually say, here I come. She's actually helped some people volunteer with us. Encouraged them to volunteer because we helped her. She met me at a store and told me which clothing rack to be at the very first time because she was so terrified. She'd been at every soiree, gala party that you'd probably been at, or at least a couple of you in here. So it's happening everywhere. It's not a socioeconomic problem, it's not a racial problem, it's not just an Alabama problem, it's an international problem. But we've rescued over 200, and 77% are Caucasian, and 76% are from Alabama. And I've rescued as young as 13, and as old as 59. This is a problem right here in our backyard. So I want to tell you a little bit about me because I am the statistic for human trafficking. I ran away the first time at 12. I was born in Noonan and raised in Carrollton and Atlanta, Georgia. The very first time I ran away at 12 years old, I wound up in Birmingham. I'm going to throw myself under the bus. That was 32 years ago. I rescued off the same front porch of a house I was trafficked to 25 years after the fact. Screaming to God when this woman called me and she told me the address where she was at. I said, why? This house. There's a million houses in the world. Why am I having to go back to this house, God? As I walk on the front porch to get her, who's in social services? Does any kind of nursing or anything like, you can't fall apart in front of people. You have to hold it together till you get to the other side. So I'm holding it together as I'm screaming at God in my head, why? And the reason, he helped me realize the reason a few months later, and I was giving a speech similar to what I'm doing now. And has anybody in here ever done any public speaking? Everybody looks at the speaker. They don't look at the audience, but the speaker can see the audience, so I can tell who believes me and who doesn't. And at this particular place I was at that day, it was obvious that the looks on their faces, they didn't believe it was happening. And God said, kind of tapped me on the shoulder as I was speaking. He said, tell them about that house. 25 years later. And I went, oh, now that's why. That's the only house in the world that I almost killed a man on because he had kidnapped, raped, and tortured me for 3 days. In that house. In Birmingham. This hasn't gone anywhere. If it's still happening in the exact same place 25 years later, we still have a huge problem. It was not fair for me to have to go back on the front porch of the house. But I did. And I would again. So between 12 and 15, I ran away. More times than I could count. And I actually spoke at a place yesterday that was a system that failed me in Georgia. And I was talking to their social workers and letting them know that it's not okay for to have punitive actions for behaviors of a teenager. Because healthy children don't run away from home. Healthy children from healthy homes don't run away. Healthy people don't get high on drugs, so drugs are not the problem. And if you walk out of here thinking prostitution, adult entertainment, and or pornography are choices, I've not done my job. Prostitution is not a victimless crime. Every single time sex is purchased from her is rape. Even if she physically submitted. If it looks like she physically submits on film, it's still rape. You don't know what's going on behind that camera, just like this camera that's filming me. Whoever watches that video has no idea of the audience that's sitting here. They have no clue what's happening. By the grace of God, I've never been put on film, but I have seen porn shoots, and I've seen guns held to children's head to make her perform. And the strip club, she is not working her way through college. Please do not fool yourself into thinking that. The first time I was put on a stage was by my pimp at 15 years old, and when he left the building, the bouncer wouldn't let you leave. And it's still happening. We had a rescue out of Miami. By the grace of God, I was able to connect with someone there who, her husband actually happened to be a plainclothes police officer. He went in and pretended to be a John. You do know what a John is, right? And he knows it. Okay, good. Everybody, I look like everybody said yes. If you didn't say yes, check the person next to you. It looks like they said yes. He pretended to be a John to get her out because they wouldn't let her out. That was the first time we used air transportation. About 8 weeks after my first rescue, I had access to airplanes, and I could not understand why. Because when God gave me the vision for Wellhouse, it was to clean up Birmingham. Just Birmingham. We've got enough girls and women here that need help. We didn't need to rescue everywhere else. There's probably about 200 I could identify right now. And those are just the ones I know about. So we have a huge problem. But I'm going to back up a little bit. 12 to 15 ran away. Talked to that group yesterday. Let them know that at 14 a judge had looked at me and said, "You're incorrigible." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "There's no hope for you." At 12, right after the first time I ran away, my social worker looked at me and she said, "When's the last time you had sex?" Did anybody in here got a 12-year-old? Or had a 12-year-old at some point in time? Could they consent to sex? Are they much? No. I should not have ever been asked that question. And the sad part of that is the week before is the first time I was raped. So I knew I was marked and I was blamed. And that's when it all started. I was placed in a psychiatric unit at 13, 14 years old for 17 days. And during that time, they didn't have adolescent psychiatric units because they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me. My behavior was being addressed and not the underlying issue of the abuse that was happening in my life. And we're still doing that to our children. And I'll share with you about that in a few minutes, how we're still doing it to our children. At 15, I met my first pimp. And by this time, I had ran away so much, I had perfected running away. What I mean by perfected is I'd ran away enough that I knew how not to get caught anymore. Do you think I knew he was a pimp when I met him? I kind of did. Because I'd ran away enough, I'd been on the streets enough, but I was already running away. Was there any other choice? Where was I going? I was running from what was supposed to be the safe place. And we had family meetings. When he took me home, there were 4 of the girls there. The oldest was about 22. 2 of them worked the streets and the truck stops. The other 2 worked clubs, strip clubs. So again, I want you to understand this, not a choice, ever. And we had family meetings every single week. And when you didn't make quota, and quota is the amount of money you're supposed to bring in every night. When you didn't make quota, your punishment did not happen in private. It happened in public, in front of all the girls, whether it was a beating or a rape, whatever his decision was at that time. So at 15, I thought he loved me more because he kept me in what I call a chemistry lab and taught me everything he thought I needed to know about cocaine. And the entire time he's telling me, he's saying, "Don't do it, don't 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 ever do it." If he told me once, he told me 1,000,000 times a day. And every single night, he's sending me out to sell drugs. And that's how I'm making quota. So, doesn't he love me more? I don't have to do what they did. Obviously, he loved me more. Until a particular night, he sends me out, drops me off. There's not enough drugs in the bag to make quota. And I was 15. What do you think happened? I had to have sex. Thank you. Most people say you got beat that night. No, I did not. I physically submitted to selling myself at 15 years old. I am in professional counseling, pastoral counseling, and being personally discipled weekly. I'm meeting with someone to walk through the fact that almost every sexual act in my life has been rape. It may not have been the abusive rape that you think of, but just so you know, there's been enough of those that I can't even count. I stopped counting when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. I've been beaten so much that my face doesn't bruise anymore. The scar above my right eye, if I told you who put it there, you would recognize his name because his championship ring did that, and he is still on national TV. And he left me in a park for dead. I've had so much structural damage that we had to pull all of my teeth, and these are plates. The scar on my neck, on the right side of my neck, is from a straight razor. I have scars in places you'll never see because pimps know how to beat you to still make you marketable. That's normal. That's what we experience. It's sad, isn't it? There's a whole lot more I could tell you, but I will tell you a few more details. I've been sold in every state but Alaska and Hawaii, and I have been sold in Canada and Mexico too, numerous times. We have a national problem. And please don't think trafficking means travel, even though travel is involved. And don't think that you're traveling from Atlanta to Birmingham. Because the trip from Atlanta to Birmingham could take 2 days because you're stopping at every single exit on the interstate being sold. So even when I talk to the small towns like Anniston and Carrollton, where I grew up, I let them know it's happening right there too. We're at a main juncture. And I hate to tell you that, well, actually I don't hate to tell you this, but isn't Mountain Brook still the 5th richest city in the United States per capita? And it's still, do you know? It is. Your target. And I'm so grateful to see men here. I'm so grateful to see men here. Because there's some common denominators I found, just in the rescues I've done. Number one, it never, ever, ever starts as an adult. Ever. And I'm still looking for the day, and for the people here under 18, please forgive me, I'm going to burst your bubble right now. Did anybody have an epiphany on your 18th birthday? You were financially able to take care of yourself, emotionally responsible, spiritually secure. Did anything happen like that on your 18th birthday? So why all of a sudden is she a criminal instead of a victim? I promise you, y'all ladies are under 18, aren't you? No epiphany. Doesn't happen. You're just an adult by law. Why are we making her a criminal at that point? That's not common denominator number one. Number two, in reference to the men, either the father was not in her life. If he was in her life, he was emotionally unavailable and did not show her what how a Christian man is supposed to treat her. Or number three, he was the abuser. Whether it was physical abuse, sexual abuse. And that's sad. And I'm really grateful when I have men in the crowd, because I can ask you to be a better father, show her, be a better grandfather, because if not, then she's going to find someone to love her, and it's not going to be easy. You know, I buried my father 2 years ago, and he was in prison. Like, the prison called me. But I also have great Christian men in my life now. Then I know what a Christian man acts like. I know what he looks like. I know how he's supposed to treat me. It's completely different. And we have men that get involved with Well House because our ladies need to know. We can't just remove the bad and not replace them with someone good. So we do need men involved too. So I was till I was 26, which is a miracle because the life expectancy of a girl who's been trafficked is about 7 years. I had 4 friends who were decapitated in Atlanta her name was never put in the paper. None of them. Because they're common knowledge, you can't kill her and or rape her. I have heard us called on radios non-human. That's the belief we have. And it looks different everywhere. Where she might be standing on the corner in Woodlawn. She might be on a back page ad in Mountain Brook. So you don't necessarily know or always able to identify it. So when God gave me the vision for a Well House, it was really different. I've worked at some local substance abuse treatment centers. I've worked at some homeless shelters. I've written some programs. I picked myself up by my bootstraps, dusted myself off, and got better, or so I thought. But I hadn't met Jesus then, so nothing had gotten better. I actually relapsed on the drugs that I was addicted to by that pimp that told me not to do them. Because how long do you think it was after I began selling myself that I began using those drugs? About 48 hours. Yeah, you're being raped 30 times a day, you're going to get high on something too. Did they become a perpetual cycle of the problem? Yes, but they're not the problem, ever. It's a symptom of the problem, just like a cough with a cold. The cough's not the problem, the cold is. And I truly believe, and this is my soapbox, and since we're in a church I can say it, that we all have a big Jesus-shaped hole inside of us, and only Jesus fills it. I tried God, and I found out recently I was backwards. Because most people like Jesus and don't like God. And I liked God and didn't like Jesus because of the way I was raised. But when I met him, my life changed. So I was re-exploited in 2006 and 7. The end of 6, 7, and went to prison in 2008 at Tutwiler. Got out in 2009 and met Roxanne from the Roxanne and Chris show. That was before she was Roxanne again in 2009. And then I met Jesus. And as a really young Christian, God called me to start the Well House, and I don't believe I was the first person he called to open a human trafficking shelter. I just believe I was naive enough as a Christian and crazy enough to raise my hand and say yes. Have y'all ever said yes and go, why did I do that? I am not a mature Christian yet, but I am more mature than I was then. And if he called me to do something like this now, I'd probably have a conversation with him in prayer for a few weeks. Be like, I'm not real sure that this is what I want to do. But he gave me the vision, and he gave me some specifics. She would never be charged a dime while she's with us. We provide everything she needs the entire time she's with us. And we provide nice stuff. She gets brand new panties, brand new bras, brand new socks, brand new pajamas, sheets, towels, pillowcases, everything when she walks in the door. Now, we will take gently used clothing, but this is my mantra and I'm sticking to it. If you won't wear it, don't bring it to us. Don't want it. We got enough rags. She deserves the best. Our homes look like Southern living. 2 requirements, and it had to be prettier than yours, and they had to feel like a princess when they walked in. And I remember when they walked in the first house out on the property, and I wasn't there that day. One of the girls called me screaming, and I thought something was horribly wrong. And I hear the other girls in the background crying and screaming, and they couldn't believe it. They were like, for us. I was like, yeah, for y'all. And I didn't do it. We just had sponsors for each room. But I knew she deserves the best. How many we got starting community college next? 4 or 5? 4 starting community college. We got a graduate who started her own business. She's actually did a contract with a national jewelry company. Our age range right now, I think we're averaging about 20 ladies in our program, which is really crazy. I just wanted to help the girls in Birmingham. But our youngest is 18 and our oldest is 56. Our 18-year-old, I'm not sure how long she'll be with us, but I'm sure it will be quite some time because she's been being sold since she was 5. That's all she knows. I've literally talked to our executive director, and we both agree that she will have to be reprogrammed. It's that bad. There was one of our ladies last year. I was walking them through Beth Moore, and I want you to understand a little bit about victimization because I didn't know I was a victim until I opened Well House. In my mind, I was a prostitute, a whore, and a dope fiend because I was blamed for everything, and society perpetuates the problem. See, that first pimp told me I would be arrested, and he would not. I was arrested the first time for prostitution at 16 years old, booked into the jail, taken to the mattress room, and raped by the officer who took me in the mattress room. There was no one to trust. Social workers had already failed me. Judges had already failed me. So what he told me was the truth, and it actually happened. He told me people would drive by me and not try to help me. Do you think he told me the truth? Absolutely. It was the truth. He told me I couldn't walk into a church because I didn't have the proper attire to get help. I am a Christian. I attend church. I'm in a church now. And a friend of mine, her son, was asked to leave a church because he had on shorts. And if a girl with a spandex mini dress, 6-inch stiletto heels, and obvious she had on no underwear walked into your church, what would you do? And please don't answer. But you think about that. What would we do? I would hope at least 1 or 2 of the ladies would walk up and make her more comfortable and say, I will sit with you wherever you want to sit, and not ask her to sit with me and with my family. Because that might be the one time that she has the courage to reach out. But my pimp told me I couldn't, and I couldn't. And everyone else had failed. So I knew we had to do something different. I teach policy occasionally at UAB for the undergrad social work program, which is really crazy, but I love policy. I'm at a human trafficking conference in another state, and I'm reading the federal law. And I look at the person sitting next to me, and I went, based on this, I'm a victim. And it was like Jesus removed the veil from my eyes, and they said, are you ready to deal with that? And I went, absolutely not. Because as long as I was a bad girl gone good, it was okay, because I could control it. It was me. I could fix it. Dust. I'm in control. Come on, most of us are from the South. If you're a Yankee, we'll talk about that later. But those of you from the South, especially you girls, are we not the fixers? Don't we fix everything? And as long as I can fix me and I'm okay, then it's all right. But if I had to look at the fact that I was a victim, the whole mentality had to change. It's been painful. Because as long as it was me, it was okay. The day I realized it wasn't me, my life changed. So last year I'm walking our ladies through Beth Moore, and I want to tell you all that so you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. And one of our ladies looks at us and she says, Twan, do you know anyone who's had a child by a relative? I said, yeah, my parents are cousins. Whole nother story, we could talk about that later. But yeah, I do know a kid by relatives. She said, well, I have a son by my uncle. She's 45, her son's 33, 12.
when she had him. My sister takes care of him, and he's like non-responsive. He's just breathing. She has to feed him, diaper him, bathe him, and everything. She said, it's my fault. And this is the words that came out of her mouth. I started having sex with my uncle when I was 5. Do you hear the whole lie in that? But that's the way she said it. I started having sex with my uncle when I was 5. I said, you did? She said, yeah, and I started my cycle when I was 11, and I didn't tell anybody, and I became pregnant, and it was my fault, so they made me have the baby. Because women in our family are supposed to service the men. And I looked at her and I went, no, your uncle started raping you when you were 5. And she said no. And this is what I asked her, because I remember she had young adult daughters. I said, don't you have girls? She said, yes. I said, tell me which one of your girls could consent to sex at 5. She said, well, none of them. I said, well, what makes you think you could? And the light bulb went off, because that's the same way God used me and my 15-year-old over the past 3 or 4 years for me to identify that I could not have consented to what was being done to me. So I actually walked through about 30 minutes with her of back and forth. I didn't consent. It's not my fault. I said, no, you didn't consent. That happened to her over 30 years ago. A few weeks ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago, I was giving a Sunday morning service at a church, a traditional service. Y'all know about traditional services? Do you have traditional and contemporary here? Mm-hmm. Traditional's what? Kids, do you go to the traditional service? They do not, do you? And she's over here going, no. At this traditional service, there happened to be 2 teenagers. And when I finished, there's some people that walk up, they want to talk to me, and this little girl walks up to me. And as she's getting to me, I look at her because I know who she is. She's me. And she says, can I talk to you in private? I said, you absolutely can. If you'll wait 1 minute, because I want to give you my undivided attention, let me finish talking to them, and you and I sit down. And she's with her grandmother. And so because I give testimony, and I will continue to give testimony for these couple of examples I'm about to give you, she looks at me and she says, after I finished talking, she said, my name is so-and-so, I'm 14 years old, my mother's been selling me since I was 3, I've sexually molested a child myself, I'm on this, and this medication, and have this, and this diagnosis. I'm currently with my paternal grandmother, and I'm safe now. And that's kind of the way I get told stuff. It just kind of plops out. And I look at this sweet baby, and I look at her grandmother, and I said, I'm really going to talk to her, and if you're upset with me when we're done, then you and I can talk. And I look at her and I said, it's not your fault that your mother started selling you when you were 3. It's not your fault that you molested a child, because that's the only way you've been expressed love is by sex. It's not your fault that you have a diagnosis. None of this is your fault. You're not old enough to say yes to any of this. You're not old enough to even make a decision to molest another child, but that's all you've ever known. And this baby looked at me and she said, it's not my fault. And it was obvious no one had ever told her it wasn't her fault. It's not her fault. I was at a church over the past week, and an 80-something-year-old woman came up to me and she said, it's not my fault. What happened to me when I was a child? And I said, no, it's not your fault. And she's in tears because she blamed herself for over 70 years. Are y'all familiar with Camp Sumatanga? How many of you send your kids to Music and Arts Week? You know about that? I was there last year. 4 of the girls admit to being trafficked. One of the girls came up to me, and this is how I know we're still blaming our children. She was that girl. Do y'all know who that girl? I see that look way back there in the back. That was me too. 10-foot tall, bulletproof, and knows everything. Yeah, that was me. She walks up to me and she says, my name is so-and-so, I'm 15, I have a problem with cocaine, I've been in 2 treatment centers, I was in foster care, and I'm finally back at home with my parents, and I'm in counseling. And I look at her and I said, can I ask you a question? Just one question. She said, yes. What made you use cocaine for the very first time? And she looked at me and she got mad. And she said, you're the first person who's ever asked me that. And she turned around and walked off. We are still blaming our children, and we are still addressing their behaviors. And it's not okay. Drugs are not the problem. Healthy children from healthy homes don't run away. It becomes a vicious, ugly cycle, but it's not the problem. And so what we do is provide relief. and a break in that cycle. Now, how many of you remember the domestic violence fight 35 years ago? Y'all know the fight women? Come on, I know there's at least 2 of you in here that know that. She married him, why don't she just leave, right? Isn't that what was said? And enough research that's been done now to know that it takes about 7 times for her to actually leave before she completely gets away. It takes us about 11. It's what I've seen to get out. Because we're so perpetuated by society and reinforced that it's our fault. And so our shelter, which is a 30 to 45 days, is like a revolving door. And that's okay. That's why we're called a place of grace. As many times as necessary. We don't require ID. We don't care what time of the night it is. It doesn't matter. We want to make sure she's safe, and we'll go get her wherever she's at. And we've used those private jets. We've used commercial air transportation. We've used buses. We've used mega buses. We've used cars. We've used whatever needed to be to get someone into our program. There's about 300 beds in the United States that are specific for women victims of human trafficking. And that's not enough. We have 24 of them at our facility. That tells you a lot. We have rescued from Washington State to Miami, Florida. And technically, we've only served 2 foreign nationals, and actually 1 is an American citizen. So she's not a foreign national anymore. These are our babies. These aren't being brought in from Thailand. And I'm not saying we don't have that problem too. I'm saying the domestic problem we have with sex trafficking are American citizens. These are our girls. These are all these sweet girls that are here tonight. When I see young girls, if they haven't been trained or taught about prevention, I see big targets on their chest. Because there's a reform pimp that says I can walk into any middle school or high school event and tell you the girls that will leave with me within 5 or 10 minutes. And he said I can usually pick out about 10 of them. And it's not taken. Leave willingly. Like, they don't have to pick them up and kidnap them. That's not it. We all have insecurities. Girls, especially as a teenager, didn't we have, my butt was too big, my skin's not this, my hair's not that, my eyes aren't this, something. I was called thunder thighs in school. I remember it because it broke my heart. It hurt me. But we all have an insecurity. All of us do. And we sexualize everything in our society. And then we don't talk about sex to our kids. That bothers me because that's where the prevention starts. Are there any test tube babies in here? Then we all got here because 2 people had sex. But we won't talk about it. We don't talk about it. We're afraid. And we've got to stop because that's where the prevention starts. So, is there anything I need to touch on that I missed? Are you good over there? Okay, Rebecca, you've heard me before. Is there anything I missed you think I needed to touch on? Because I know you see it too. So, is there anything I missed that I need to touch on? No? Okay. Questions? I'm gonna tell you something. Let me tell you how quiet it got in here. My grandmother, I miss her so much. She was like the one person throughout my entire life that was always there. I ran away several times and wound up at my mama's during those 12 to 15. But it was so quiet in here you could hear a mouse pee on cotton. That's what she would have said. That's quiet. Anyway, does anybody have any questions? If you haven't realized by now, I'm kind of open. My skeletons sit on my front porch. I have clothes in my closet. It makes life easier. If you've got any skeletons in your closet, I would just bring them out on the front porch. You won't have to worry about anything what anybody says anymore, I promise.
Tell us what life is like for your residents at Well House.
What is life like for our residents at our Well House? I tell you what, I've been around, because I am the founder of the Well House, but we've got a new employee that's here, and I'm going to throw her under the bus now. Come on, Ashley. Because I want her to give a perspective of someone brand new walking in that hasn't seen the whole crazy process.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Ashley Anderson. She's our development director. And she texted me and she said, there's something today about crazy. And I was like, yeah, you are crazy. You work at Well House. And,
yes.
It does take kind of crazy to do what we do. But hold on.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ashley Anderson. I'm the new development director, and I will say this, although many of us will not ever hear a story like Tawan's probably, and you may feel a little uncomfortable by it, we have other ladies at the home that have that story. They're very special. What I will say is when the young ladies come in, and we were so blessed yesterday, I will say this, we had a fantastic staff meeting. I will say it was team building. And I was lucky enough to talk with so many of our other program people. They do so much for us. They're on the front lines. I get to go speak to churches. I get to go have fun and eat lunch and have dinners. They're there every day. And I cannot express to you truly what they go through. We pray. We have devotionals in our office. If somebody's stressed out, we will stop and we will pray for them because that's what they need. And our executive director said this the other day. Although we're there for the ladies that we serve, we're also there for each other because our staff truly needs your prayers too. Tawan needs our prayers. Oh, I can guarantee that. When the ladies come in, and I say all of that because when we get a call for a rescue, everything stops. That call is taken. Everything is taken very seriously. And that's when everything starts to move. I know one of the ladies in particular, she would drop everything and get in the car, and she would go by herself if she thought she could. That's how important it is. We don't want that to happen, obviously. I would get in the car with her.
I'm not going to tell you.
I know, I don't want to, I don't want to know that. But I will say this, it's happened, but when they come in, we have to assess their needs. We want to make sure they're healthy. And as Tawan said, they need basics. They need underwear. They need bras and panties. They need shirts and pants. They want just what we have. I mean, they deserve it. When they come in, we will assess everything. But most importantly, they get to rest. Okay? They need a time to rest. And what they'll do is they'll go into their rooms and they have a fantastic place to stay and pray, and we'll pray with them. Now, what I will say is we have wonderful volunteers that will go above and beyond for us. We have a volunteer coordinator. Who thought? I mean, fantastic. She will do anything for these ladies. We have social coaches. And I think that's the most important part of this is that they are paired up with someone who will kind of help them through, pray with them, which is most important. Yeah.
How many year commitment we're asking you on that now for the social coaches?
We're doing, well, we would like to see them lifelong.
Yeah.
We really want to see them be with these ladies, but several years. Yeah. Absolutely. And we want that because they need that stability. They crave the consistency. They need that. And I will say with the social coaches, we try to get the best people fit with the best person. But, they are fantastic. When they come in, and we also have house parents, which is kind of new to the Well House. We had initially, and again, it's about consistency because that's what these ladies crave. They live at the homes with the ladies. And we have a husband and wife that are there. And we've also, we have a intermediate shelter. And what that will entail, that's what Tawan was talking about when they come in for 30 to 45 days. Then, that's where we assess and provide their healthcare needs and give them clothing and let them rest. Now, at the Next Steps for Freedom, if they choose to go to our other home, what we will do is many of them are working full time. Mm-hmm. Many of them are, as we said earlier, are wanting to go to school. That's huge because guess what? They're thinking about the future. And that's something that they hadn't thought about before. That's a long answer to your question, but it's a big question.
Other questions?
Come in with nothing, though.
They come in with nothing.
Certificates, social security.
No, we help them get their IDs, and we will help them get their GEDs if they so choose. We'll help them with that. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes.
All right, when you say you get a call, how do they find you?
Please ask God that. I've been trying to figure that out for 4 years.
Wait a minute.
She said, when we get a call, how do they find us? Literally, I've received I remember receiving a crisis call from a woman who said a gas station attendant in Biloxi, Mississippi gave me your number. We had a volunteer had a Sharpie that wrote, she saw 4 girls at a truck stop and wrote, she said, Twan, I don't vandalize, but I did that day. And she took that Sharpie and wrote our crisis line number on the bathroom wall and told the girls. I had a girl out of Nashville that she had Googled prostitution, and we were the first thing that came up. And so she called us. We get law enforcement referrals. The text I got today was, that's our next step. We need $900,000 to buy the property that we have, because we need a home for women with children. There is one home in the United States for women with children. I got a text today from a sister agency in another state that said, I have a woman with a 10-month-old baby. And I said, no, we're not taking women with children yet. And she said, well, I may have to split them up and put the child in foster care, and the woman may come to us. And I told her to call the crisis line. It breaks my heart. Let me tell you something else that might blow you away. All the girls we've rescued from out of state, every single girl we've rescued from out of state knows what Oxmoor Road is. That's how bad it is. And the reason I say that is because on Oxmoor Road right now, I've got a 20-year-old with a 14-month-old baby that I'm going to see regularly because we don't have a place to put her. And she's at one of the motels on Oxmoor. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, do any of the ladies ever get reunited with their families?
Her question is, I just want to make sure everybody hears, is do any of the ladies ever get reunited with their families? Absolutely. They do. Some, because we're blamed so much in society, our families blame us and if you just got off drugs, that's what my family told me. If you just stop using, everything will get better, and that's not true. Even 12-step programs tell you after coming here, we realized we were sick people. Drugs are 10% of the problem, they're not the problem. So sometimes the bridges have been burned, and that's why we need the social coaches, because we heal in community. Community's where we're safe. How many of you in here in high school dated somebody other than your husband and your girlfriend said, don't you go out with him? There's enough giggles to know that that's touched you. We heal in community. Community protects us. We're isolated. We have been isolated as victims. So sometimes just that those reunifications happen, and sometimes they don't. Yes, sir.
I appreciate the fact that you said 4 of your women and 4 ladies are going to community college. Tell me a little bit about that whole process, and you have ongoing support systems for those ladies once they decide to go into college, or how does that work, and where do they get the dollars for the tuition, et cetera?
He asked, what is the ongoing support for our ladies who are wanting to go into community college? Most of them are eligible for Pell Grants. Any fee outside of that, we'll pay for. And if you would like to set up a fund for that, we would be more than happy to talk with you. I'm serious, because it's a very serious matter, because there's application fees, there's things that won't be covered, but we will pay for everything. That's the vision God gave me, because we don't ever want her to have to worry. She doesn't need to worry if she's going to have toothpaste. She don't need to worry where she's going to get the money for whatever, for there's application for school, because I don't have it. And God has honored that, and we've been able to do that. Carolyn, our executive, she and I are very much on the same page. When I stepped down as executive director last year, because I do so much of this, I'm everywhere this week. This is what I do now, is raise awareness and trainings. But we've got to have stuff like that. We would love to have a fund specifically for college. That would be more incentive. And you got cards with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, she's got business cards with her. She would be the woman to talk to. Okay,
Twan, knowing that your program runs 30 to 45 days, and these women come in with deep, deep scars, what are you hoping to accomplish in 30 to 45
She said, knowing our program runs 30 to 45 days, what do we hope to accomplish? Our program, they can stay as long as they need to in our long term. And we're not going to put them out in that 30 to 45 days if there's nowhere for them to go. We just try to give them, you need to make a decision. I kind of consider it respite and an introduction to Jesus. Our long-term next steps of freedom is immersion in Christ. So, does that make sense? Okay. Somebody over here? Yes, ma'am.
I just knew of a foster family that took a child in that it was similar, was living with their family, but when you say you educate the social workers, is our system messed up in the social worker system and the DHR system? And
I used to
Will
be.
that child go back to that home, you know?
She asked,
Because the child always wants to go back to the home.
right, because we suffer from Stockholm syndrome. We're going to defend. She asked about DHR. I train DHR regularly. The problem with that is we're not on a CAN report, which is a child abuse and neglect report. We can't identify sex trafficking. We can identify sexual abuse. So we're not asking the right questions in forensic interviews. But I am working with state level to work on that. The problem is we've got to have a home for children.
Well, that's like.
We need a fund for that, too.
Truancy, she went going to
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
There was a deeper problem.
Yeah, there's a much deeper problem. You had a question, sir?
You mentioned men.
Yes,
You happy to see men here tonight?
absolutely thrilled.
Explain in greater detail.
I can absolutely explain in greater detail. You'll hold this.
Absolutely.
We didn't hear his question.
I'm going to repeat it. He asked. I was happy to see. I said I was happy to see men here, and could I explain that in greater detail why I'm happy to see men here? Who knows what that is? A graph. It's a graph. I'm sorry, it's bad. I'm kind of leaning down. Huh? Right, but what it's the demand curve, right? You get rid of the demand, the supply goes away. 95% of the purchasers of sex are men. And the current demographic of the purchaser of sex are 18 to 60-year-old Caucasian men with expendable income. That's the problem. If we get rid of the demand, the supply goes away and the pimp doesn't have a job.
Can you tell these girls, high school girls that are here, that come from a loving home, that come from a Christian home, that have all that support, how they still could get caught up in this?
Oh, absolutely. She asked me if I could tell the teenage girls that are here how could they still get caught up in it. On our video, I-20 video, there's a perfect example of a mother and a daughter getting caught up in it through a modeling job. And it was a reputable modeling company, and it wound up being a pornography company. It's very easy to be entrapped over a period of time. This is grooming. This doesn't happen overnight necessarily. This can happen over a process of months. I just happened to be a runaway and was really easily exploited. But pimps are, there's actually a there was a DVD series on Amazon that we fussed about enough they had it taken off, but it was called How to Break a Bitch. It was a how-to series. You can still go on Amazon now and buy the Pimp's Bible. There are how-to books out there to teach boys how to exploit girls or men. So yeah, just because you're from a Christian home or an affluent home doesn't mean you're not vulnerable. There's a new drug out, and I can't think of the name of it, that has a quicker recovery effect than GHB or Rohypnol, the date rape drug. What happens is they're called skip parties. How many of you have blocks of classes that are an hour and a half? They're a little bit longer than other blocks. Are y'all on a block system? No? Okay, well you might be a little safer then, but there's skip parties that are happening where the boys talk you in, or a girl talks you into skipping. They give you the drug and a drink. It makes you very uninhibited, just as if it was GHB or Rohypnol. You don't remember. The recovery time is much quicker, so you can go back to school. And they're videoing sexual acts with the girls and using that video to shame them. Because because it looks like they're consenting. And as we blame our children still, we would blame them. And the shame behind that, and they'll use that video. A fellow survivor was trafficked her entire 4 years out of high school from midnight to 4 a.m. and her parents never knew it. Based on something like that. Girls, I will tell you this, there is a new fingernail polish out that will turn black if there's a drug in your drink. Whether it's a Coke drink or whatever. It's clear, it will turn black. You can just stick your finger down in it. I don't know the answer to that one. Oh, it's you. Really? You're here? I see that. I love Catherine Romero. Yes. Any other questions? Okay, yes, ma'am.
What are your plans for long term, like 2 years or 3 years, housing and maintenance?
We need to purchase that property. We don't want to open a home for children and or a home for women with children without owning it, because a nonprofit mortgaging something is just not a good combination. The board, Carolyn and I all believe that. We want to purchase that. That way we can open a home for women with children. then we can open a home for children. Because women with children would be really easy, and I'm sure we'll collaborate at some point to open a home for children. That's our long-term goal. We also there's 72 acres out there with an in-ground swimming pool, 4 houses, and enough land that we could build transitional and permanent housing. And so once we purchase the property, we're going to start seeking people to sponsor an entire home. Hold on, I have one over here. Where'd she go? Way back there in the back.
We talk a lot about talking to your kids about sex and that we don't talk about it, and that's a helpful thing for preventative. What specifically, I mean, is there something specific you would think that you would need to tell your kids besides the obvious?
Her question is that I'd said something about the prevention is talking to our children about sex. And she asked, is there specific? Everything is age appropriate when it comes to sex. But we need to call them what they are. Al's gonna kill me. It's a vagina and a penis. I'm sorry, that's what it is. We don't need, it's not all those other names we give it. And again, I would say the same thing I said earlier. Unless you're a test tube baby, everybody in this room got here because 2 people had sex. We're not talking about it. We're not telling them what Christian appropriate sex is, that it's between a man and a woman and a husband and a wife. And she's a treasure and not a trophy. I mean, we're shopping at stores that label pink across her butt. Really? That didn't even make sense. I mean, it's not appropriate. It's not okay. And we're not saying that's not appropriate. We're perpetuating the problem. I mean, I don't shop at that store. Well, I can't afford it, but I'm shopping at it anyway. We over-sexualize everything. So, okay, yes, ma'am. It's your turn.
Yay! So I know y'all said that y'all pray with each other and y'all pray with the women there, but like, how can we as a church pray for you? Like, what do you need us to be praying for? Like, anything specific? I know there's a lot, but like, what would your like priority points be for us?
She asked me, what would the priority points for prayer be for us? First of all, protection, guidance. God gives the vision, He gives provision. So we always need, provision, but definitely guidance, wisdom, and protection with what we do. Those are 3 like big specifics for our entire staff, volunteers, board, ladies, everything.
I will say this, our executive director says this beautifully. We have only pricked the surface of the problem. We haven't made anybody mad yet. I want to make somebody mad. So pray for that.
You know they're gonna come after me when you do that, right?
No, they're not.
Okay,
No,
they'll come. She wants
we'll
to
work
make.
it out.
No, actually, I want them to come after me. I don't have Stockholm syndrome anymore. I would prosecute them right over here. Yes, ma'am.
You were saying earlier a home for children. So are you saying that if they're not 18, you won't take them in?
We can't right now because federal law mandates DHR to take them. I have rescued as young as 13, but law enforcement. And I'm also a mandated reporter. We have to report it to the proper authorities.
So
The good news.
And they get what kind of help from there?
Well, the truth is they usually run away within 2 days.
Oh.
Sorry, that's just the truth with what I've seen. We've got to do something different. And we're at a place, Wellhouse, now with probably some local partners that we could actually have the staff and everything to open a home for children. We just don't have the finances yet.
Do they send those kids to group homes, or will they try to put them in a foster parent home?
She said, do they send her children to group homes and or a foster parent home? Both. I was crying, bawling on my porch the other day because a 17-year-old I counseled was found half naked dead in the woods. Locally. Recently. Yes, ma'am.
What percentage of the women you have now were in foster care?
That's some good she said, what percentage of the women we have now were in foster care? That's some good research that hasn't been done yet. So, there's a lady right back. Yes, ma'am.
All right, if we want to help you as a volunteer.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us what areas, what we can do and what we can't.
She said, what do we want, if you want to help as a volunteer, what areas can you do and can you not do? Susie Gunner,
Susie, yeah.
Susie Gunner is our volunteer coordinator, and we have volunteer applications. She's volunteering to be that coordinator. So we have applications online, and it actually has some questions about what you would like to do. But if you keep up with our Facebook page, we actually post needs. Right now, we're in huge need for people with transportation to help us transport our ladies.
Transportation.
Yeah, we need, because we provide everything they need, and y'all know as well as I do, if you don't have a car in Birmingham or in Alabama, you're messed up. You can't get anywhere. You can't get to a doctor. Somebody over here had another question? Anybody else?
Is that to go to St. Clair County and get them and bring them to Birmingham?
She asked, is that to go to St. Clair County and get them and bring us whatever, there's so many needs.
We're not asking for the rescue, but to take them to
Right,
doctor's
yeah.
appointments,
Right.
counseling, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yes.
What does like a typical rescue look like?
She asked, what does a typical rescue look like? There's not a typical rescue. You never know what they look like. Some can be very dangerous and some are not. And I know that Ashley doesn't want to hear this, but I did them by myself for a number of years. You can't be, and I still go into those dark places, I'm sorry. Everybody don't know that. Well, I guess everybody does now, but it's on camera.
They will. You should know.
Yeah, but you never know. We actually have a mock video of an airplane rescue on our website. It's Hurt and the Healer. It's beautiful, but it has it's actually a great example of airplane rescue. Local rescues, they all look different. Everyone's different. Yes.
What do you do if the situation is dangerous? Have you ever had to leave them?
She said, what do you do if the situation is dangerous? Have you ever had to lead them? I've actually had to dress a 19-year-old that was nude in a hotel room with 2 men. I wasn't leaving without her. I don't care how dangerous it got. You just walk through it. Now, I do always have someone know that if you hadn't gotten a text or a phone call from me within 30 to 45 minutes, this is where I'm at. Or this is where I was going. And I'm really recognizable. My car and everything is. FBI's laughed at me because my tag says Tawan.
Yeah.
And I just got a new car and I'm transferring it, so yeah. He says, you're really recognizable. I went, I did that for you.
Yeah.
So,
It's on purpose.
yes, ma'am.
Well, for example, the 14-month-old you were talking about, what is that child doing while the mother is being trafficked? And are they waiting for that child to grow up and they'll just traffic her?
He's not being trafficked. She's just staying in a hotel because we have nowhere to put her right now.
So, okay.
So we've got some support outside of her that's helping, and I'm helping as much as I can. But right now she's with family in Georgia and she needs to get away from there, so. Anyway. He's safe. What do you want?
2 questions.
Okay.
If you can speak to that it's not just about girls. That
Yes, this is not just about girls. We've got a ring of 15 and 16-year-old boys that are being brought in from Houston regularly, and his name is Jonathan. He's 5'6", blonde hair, blue eyes, weighs 110 pounds, and I can tell you the last thing he had on when the last phone call we got. This is not just girls. And there's only 1 shelter in the United States for boys, and there's only 2 beds in the United States for men, and there are 2 men in Alabama that have, with 3 men in Alabama that have actually reached out to me that I've been counseling with for a number of years who are survivors. It's not just girls. And your next question.
And then also how local law enforcement assists you with any of this.
Okay, she said, how does local law enforcement assist us with any of this? Local is getting better. We actually have some really good local judges who will tell a girl, you need to go to Well House. The problem is that this is where, addressing your question again about men. First of all, the attempt to purchasing sex needs to be a felony, and he needs to be a registered sex offender. Period. It would deter it. If we get about 10 people that had some affluence and influence and power across the nation that happened to, recidivism, purchasing, that'd go down. There'd be no more supply. That's number 1. Local law, because the purchasing of sex right now is a Class C misdemeanor, they get a slap on the wrist, and she gets arrested because prostitution's a crime. HB 433 just went into, Jack Williams just put it in, it's safe harbor. Because right now in Alabama, a 14-year-old cannot consent to sex, but they can be arrested for prostitution. So unless that bill goes through and we have safe harbor, then we want to address it. Federally, because those are municipal laws and or state laws, they have no mandate over it. So we've got to break down in the system again when it comes to local, federal, and state law enforcement. And then on top of that, Birmingham has 28 municipalities. 28 municipalities that they each have their own police department. So let's talk about a whole nother breakdown. Anyway, now the ball is rolling. We're changing it. We're getting there. So, any other questions? Yes.
Has it ever happened that when the girls get into like your homes that they like decide that they like reject your help or like reject?
Absolutely. Her question is, did the girls reject our help? Our shelter is a revolving door. Remember I said earlier it takes about 11 times of going in and out for a girl to get help? Yes, it does. So they reject all the time because they don't feel worthy. We have to love them through it. That's our responsibility.
I have a friend who was a member of a group that when they got a call that there was a certain hotel in Birmingham where pimps had their girls stay in, they would go and form a circle and pray. And many times one or more of those girls would come out. And do you know about that?
I'm talking about Roxanne on Special Ops?
Yes.
Okay, that's the way Roxanne, Lisa, and I are the ones who started. Lisa's who led me to Christ. Her real name is Lisa.
Really?
Yeah, she was talking about Special Ops that we do every afternoon, Monday at 1 o'clock at the Woodlawn McDonald's. We were out Monday. Yeah, we're still out. We have 4 different outreaches through Wellhouse now. If you're interested in doing strip club outreach, and men, you could do it on the outside. You're never allowed to go in. And women, if you would like to do it, you need to email dreamdancersministry@gmail.com. And it's fantastic, but you're going to have to go through a training with Megan. She's the leader of that. But the other thing is yes, you're going to see girls nude. Don't ask her that. It's kind of funny because will I see a naked girl at a strip club? Yes, you're going to see a naked girl at a strip club, and you can't be judgmental of her yeah. So if you're not prepared to do that, but there's a prayer team for that. There's a delivery team that actually goes in the club. There's a food team and a gift team. And we're not going in there to rescue. We're going in to share the love of Christ. So, any other questions? Well, thank you. Ashley and I are going to hang around for a minute. Any questions? And thank you, Suzanne. And awesome job, Canterbury, for doing this.